Good evening. This is the, let me check the date, September 2nd, 2014 meeting of the City Council of the City of Sammamish. My name is Tom Vance, and I'm pleased to be and honored to be your mayor. Madam City Clerk, can you call the roll?
Mayor Tom Vance.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kathy Huckabee. Present. Councilmember Don Gerand.
Here.
Councilmember Bob Keller.
Present.
Councilmember Tom Odell.
Here.
Councilmember Ramiro Valderrama.
Present.
Councilmember Nancy Whitten.
Councilmember Whitten has asked to be excused. She is away on family business. Do I have a motion to excuse?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're okay. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask our distinguished Deputy Mayor to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the agenda. This is the agenda, including the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? And a second? And there was a second, I believe.
Second, as long as there's discussion.
There is discussion.
Okay.
Councilmember Odell.
I'd like to request that item number 6, the Route 269 partnership, be removed from consent and added to new business.
Okay, we'll make that item, well, we'll just move it down to before the resolution, number 11. So in front of that. Anything else? Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, tonight we have 3 actual presentations and proclamations. And we'll just get started. I'm going to meet on the first one, Corey Walters. This is concerning the Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry. Or month, it says day, but this is, yeah. It actually goes for a whole month, but. That's right. So I'll meet Corey at the podium.
I still look this way for the podium.
Okay. This is a proclamation, the Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry, and I'm going to read this material. Whereas our King County cities recognize adequate nutrition as a basic goal for each citizen, and whereas no parent should have to send a child to school hungry, no baby should be without the comfort of feedings needed for mental and physical growth, no elderly person's health should be jeopardized by lack of appropriate foods, and whereas food banks, emergency and hot meal programs working with our cities, local churches, social service agencies, and hundreds of volunteers are striving day in and day out to stem the tide of rising tide of hunger, but still need more help. And whereas we believe that the citizens who are not involved hear of the especially desperate needs of the hungry as winter approaches and their low incomes must stretch to cover increasing fuel, electricity, and rental costs, leaving even less money for monthly food purchases, an outpouring of community assistance will follow. And whereas the Emergency Feeding Program of Seattle and King County coordinates an annual food drive to help support the efforts of the program and the area's food banks in fighting hunger, which will be held at grocery stores throughout King County on Saturday, September 27th, 2014. And whereas the city of Sammamish is so committed to this effort, the food drive will be expanded to 4 weekends, running September 13th through October 4th. Food donations will be accepted at the Safeway store in the Highlands, the Pine Lake QFC, and the Klahani QFC. All the food donated will go to the Redmond or Issaquah food banks. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Tom Vance, on behalf of this of Sammamish City Council do hereby proclaim September 27th, 2014 as the Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry and strongly urge all citizens to join the emergency feeding program and our local food banks to nourish those who are hungry. Signed this day, 2nd of September 2014.
Thank you.
Forgot my notes. Our second proclamation is National Recovery Month. And I'm going to ask Cheryl Golick, project and program manager for King County Mental Health. By the way, I forgot to mention, Corey Walters is executive director of the ISQA Food and Clothing Bank. Cheryl is the program and project manager for King County Mental Health. Okay. Whereas behavioral health is an essential part of health and one's overall wellness, and whereas prevention of mental or substance abuse disorders works, substance use disorders works, treatment is effective, and people recover in our area and around the nation, and whereas preventing and overcoming mental and/or substance abuse disorders is essential to achieving healthy lifestyles, both physically and emotionally, and whereas we must encourage relatives and friends of people with mental and/or substance abuse disorders to implement preventive measures, recognize the signs of a problem, and guide those in need to appropriate treatment and recovery support services. And whereas in 2012, 2.5 million people aged 12 or older received specialty treatment for a substance abuse disorder, and 34.1 million adults aged 18 or older received mental health services, according to the 2012 National Survey on Drug Use and Health. Given the serious nature of the public health problem, we must continue to reach the millions more who will need help. And whereas to help more people achieve and sustain long-term recovery, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, and the City of Sammamish invite all residents of Sammamish, Washington to participate in National Recovery Month. Now and therefore, I, Tom Vance, on behalf of the Sammamish City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of September as National Recovery Month. And it is signed my name. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to give you this poster also. National Recovery Month.
All right, thank you.
So posters were given to
Would you
every
speak here?
CD and chemical dependency and mental health agency within King County. And we did a little research, and this past year in Sammamish, we served Medicaid eligible people. 110 people received mental health services and 25 people received chemical dependency services, and that's approximately 5% of your overall population, so it does affect everybody. And again, thank you very much for supporting this.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Next, we have Diaper Need Awareness Week, and receiving this proclamation is Carrie McGill, the Eastside Baby Corner. Hello. Let me read this. Whereas diaper need, the condition of not having a sufficient supply of clean diapers to ensure that infants and toddlers are clean, healthy, and dry, can adversely affect the health and welfare of infants, toddlers, and their families. And whereas national surveys report that 1 in 3 mothers experiencing diaper need at some time while their children are less than 3 years of age, and 48% of families delay changing a diaper to extend their supply. And whereas the average infant or toddler requires an average of 50 diaper changes per week over 3 years, and whereas diapers cannot be bought with food stamps or WIC vouchers, therefore obtaining a sufficient supply of diapers can cause economic hardship to families. And whereas a supply of diapers is generally an eligibility requirement for infant and toddlers to participate in child care programs and quality early education programs. And whereas the people of Sammamish recognize that addressing diaper need can lead to economic opportunity, for the state's low-income families and can lead to improved health for families and their communities. And whereas Sammamish is proud to be support community organizations that recognize, I think I said that wrong, but recognize the importance of diapers in helping provide economic stability for families and distribute diapers to poor families through various channels. Now, therefore, I, Tom Vance, Mayor of the City of Sammamish, do hereby proclaim the week of September 8th through the 14th, 2014, as Diaper Need Awareness Week. Thank you for coming. Okay, next up is public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the council. 3 minutes limit per person, or 5 minutes if representing the official position of a recognized community organization. Do we have a list? Okay, I've got 4 on here. Mark Rush, please give your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Mark Rush. I reside at 1488 207th Avenue, Northeast Sammamish. And I'm here tonight to speak briefly on the drainage regulation that was in your last City of Sammamish article. I've got a video right now that I'm playing for you guys that shows...
We'll be having a public hearing a little later. Is this related to that? Okay, well then, why don't you hold on? We will start the public hearing a little bit later, not too far from now, and then you can speak during the public hearing, the official public hearing. Okay. So anyone else who's here to speak about the stormwater issues, we'll get to that as soon as possible, but it's on the agenda here fairly quickly. Anyone else? I see I have Leslie Lardy. Is that also? And I have. It's hard for me to read. D-A-R-T Del D-U-C-K-C-A?
No, that's Dan, but that's on public storm.
It's also on stormwater? Okay. Dan, okay, well now I know. So, Jill Rush? Same issue? No. A different one, okay. Please give your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi again, I'm Jill Rush, 1488 207th Avenue Northeast in Sammamish. I'm here because I was here probably 9 months and a year ago asking this very question. And I haven't received an answer yet, but I would really like to know who and why keeps granting exceptions to our building permits. And I've been promised a sit down, I've been promised an answer, and it's been a year and I still do not have that. We are having permits that have exceptions being granted that are not abiding by our city code, not abiding by Washington state law, or not even considering our federal SEPA laws. Because of this, you're putting many homes in the city in danger, because we're now in hazardous zones, which you'll see when these guys come up and show you what it's doing to the existing homeowners. In your own words, on a city posted document that said exception is granted, a whole paragraph was written about now we're in a hazardous zone for mudslides, floods. The sensitive areas were not documented and they are going to be cut down and destroyed. So I just wanted to know when someone would please have a sit down with me and show me why these exceptions are being granted, who's doing it, and what protocol are they following?
Yes, Mr. City Manager.
Jill, good to see you. Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
to the council meeting. And the community development director is Jeff Thomas is sitting back there, so he's going to come to you. If you could give him the name of the permit or what permits that you're concerned. We'll get back to you on that one.
Well, there's many throughout the city. If you go street by street, I think you'll hear story after story. And I think it's a general thing that's happening in the city of Sammamish, and it's been happening for years. And also, they're working off very old permits too, 2004, 2005.
We'll follow up with you on that one. So if you could just let him know any specific ones.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else care to give public comment tonight? Not on the stormwater issues that we will have coming up a little bit later? Okay, seeing no one else, public comment is closed. And, right. We're going to move to that public hearing. So I have some names here, but first, Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, did we approve the consent agenda?
Yes, we did.
Thank you. This is an ordinance that we passed on an emergency basis. We set the date to have a hearing on this. I'm going to ask staff to give you the staff report on this. Laura Philpott, our Public Works Director, is going to provide you that staff report. Laura?
So as our city manager stated, we are here to talk about the stormwater ordinance. The Inglewood neighborhood, just for a little background, some of this information we shared in July 15th, when this emergency ordinance was enacted. I want to step back through it for those in the audience that are here for public testimony and also as a refresher. The Inglewood neighborhood was platted in the 1800s. The neighborhood itself has inadequate stormwater facilities and increased development pressure with the economy improving, and developers are looking for sites to construct new homes. So we have a map here that shows the outline of the neighborhood that we're talking about. It's the Inglewood neighborhood, again, that was platted in the 1800s. You can see here, is there a mouse? There's not. Inglewood Hill Road is right through the middle. Lake Sammamish, East Lake Sammamish Parkway is the the western edge.
Laura, excuse me, Laura, before you move on, could you go back to that map? And I'd like you, for my benefit and for the benefit of people watching this presentation, to have some comment on the color, the purple color and the yellow, what they designate.
So the purple area is the landslide hazard based on geology, and the yellow is areas that are steep slopes. So those are shown here so you can see some of the critical areas that exist. And the topography is lowest near the lake and higher as you move eastern towards the east. And so all of the stormwater drains downhill towards that purple zone.
Thank you.
What's happening now is we're having a number of small footprint homes. We have an example on the next slide here, just to give because these lots, again, were platted back in the 1800s. The example shows that we're really getting density closer to 6 units per acre. So you can see how tight that density is on this map, showing where some of these building permits were recently constructed. The adopted emergency ordinance, excuse me, changes the threshold for drainage review. So currently, before this emergency ordinance was enacted, 2,000 square feet would need to be of impervious surface, would need to be added to a lot before drainage review under our current Sammamish Code, Chapter 13. Thank you, Eric. And that still exists elsewhere in the city. But with the emergency ordinance now, that's reduced to 500 square feet. So if somebody could still do an addition, a small addition, or a patio without triggering some very onerous stormwater drainage review. However, building a new home or a major renovation would require drainage review and compliance with our stormwater code. again, this is specifically targeted towards the Inglewood neighborhood.
Laura, before you go further, let's just, for the benefit of the audience, is that what drainage review accomplishes to weigh and means of addressing the storm drainage generated from the new development. Previously, threshold was 2,000 square feet, and we were getting in applications for 1,995 square feet. That includes roof lines and driveways and everything. And particularly in this neighborhood, it's a critical issue, as you had recognized and directed me as a body, and I want to thank all of you. This was a concern to all 7 of you. 1 council member's in here, so 6 of you. We don't have any storm drainage facilities there for people to connect. And if you don't do the detailed drainage review, you're not necessarily asked to provide how you're going to make the storm drainage connections for the new development. That's why you reduced the threshold to 500 square feet. You did 500 square feet not because, not 0 square feet, partly because if somebody wants to do the remodel or addition to their homes, they don't have to go through an extensive permitting process. Keep going, please.
So during the discussion back in July, there was some expressed concern from the council about having this inadvertently kind of unintended consequences, the way it was written, could be interpreted that it needed to be applied citywide, and we did not want to apply this citywide. So we added language, and we actually added a map to the ordinance that specifically showed that outline, so it was very clear what the intent was, and so that people could see. And then also, we added some language, so there was language and a map.
The reason you did not want to do citywide application, partly because you don't have the similar circumstances that you have in Inglewood Hill drainage basin area. Citywide, you have the storm drainage facilities for development to connect. This particular area, we don't have a storm drainage system. So I think we need to clarify these a little bit detailed as we.
Yes, so other locations within the city, we're not worried about where the water, we have locations for the water that can handle the additional runoff. Whereas this area, because of the landslide hazard in the critical areas, there's concern about that accumulative effect. And because of this, the city council actually programmed a major stormwater renovation project, the Inglewood Hill Stormwater Drainage Trunk Line, which we are currently in the design phase of. And that project, without that being completed, for someone to come in and construct, they need a place to put their water in Inglewood. And right now, there isn't a stormwater facility, there isn't a pipe, there isn't infrastructure. So for a single-family home, to pipe all the way from the home all the way down to the lake for a safe discharge would actually be quite onerous. This is why the city's putting in the trunk line. However, kind of we didn't expect this, and you may hear some testimony later, we actually are getting some developers who are being innovative with their stormwater. We had one who came in and talked to us about doing some rainwater harvesting. So there may be some positive and some innovative thinking that come out of this emergency stormwater ordinance that doesn't actually stop building, but allows us to be smarter about how we manage the water. So the next steps associated with the next steps associated with this particular ordinance, because it was an emergency ordinance, is we needed to have a public hearing within 60 days. And so that's what we've asked the council to do tonight. So we need to open the public hearing, hear testimony, and if there are proposed changes to the ordinance, something we could enact, the council can enact this evening. This is also going to the Planning Commission for some more detailed work. It's scheduled currently as a work session on September 18th, and then a public hearing and deliberation. So there'll be another chance for the public to give their testimony to the Planning Commission on October 16th. And if we don't get done on October 16th, we have a placeholder for a date in November as well. We can squeeze some time in November. Our goal is to be back to City Council early next year so we can have permanent regulations in place within 6 months, because that's the sunset of the existing emergency ordinance.
Any questions at this point? Councilmember Valderrama?
Yeah, and Laura, I've been very supportive of this resolution being looked at, or this ordinance being looked at. One question that I asked before, and it goes back to my engineering, we always have the with and without. This is applied to a specific neighborhood, as we've discussed here, an area for specific reasons. What is going to be the net impact of how many less homes do we estimate will be able to be built in this confined area?
That would be a hard question, again, because if we have developers who are innovative and come up with other solutions, and if we move forward, as we move forward with our infrastructure pipe in Inglewood, there'll be other opportunities for people to tie into those lines. So
Under the way this ordinance is drafted, I understand the rainwater harvesting we'll be looking at later. How many will we be able to reduce from these 6 per acre? How many net homes will be reduced in that area?
Well, let me clarify. We're not saying we're going to look at rainwater harvesting in the future.
Understood.
It's something that could actually be enacted, a technique or a tool for them to handle their existing stormwater. So instead of the stormwater running from lot to lot, it would actually be collected on site, maybe potentially in a tank under the garage, and then used for washing their clothes and irrigation or flushing toilets. And so I don't think that I can come up with, I think that would be difficult. We could do some discussions offline and maybe try to get back to see.
I would, because I had asked for that last time to get some estimate of what the net effect would be.
Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, I think, Councilmember Valderrama, I don't think that staff can give you quantitative number.
I'm not asking an exact,
Let me
I'm
finish
just
if I
asking
may.
for an approximate.
This will make it very difficult and very expensive for somebody to build a single-family home and tightline it all the way down the hill. And because of that, I mean, obviously, the City Council's intent is not to impose a moratorium. Your intent is to fix the problem.
Exactly.
We have a problem there, storm drainage problem. To that end, you had already authorized staff to start designing process for building a comprehensive storm drainage system. That system will be there probably in about 2 to 3 years timeline. In the meantime, somebody could conceivably come over here, submit a building permit applications, greater than 500 square foot, and demonstrate to staff saying that there will not be any storm drainage coming off the site. They will be utilizing 100% of that. To answer that question, it's a hypothetical question. I can't, nor can staff. It's the open market. We don't know who would be proposing such application.
Yeah,
but what I can tell you, reusing the storm drainage 100%, it's a very expensive proposal. That obviously the market condition is going to determine how much money one would want to spend on the site, plus the home and plus the storm drainage requirements to see being market competitive. I don't know that.
Okay. As I prefaced before, I am supportive of this, and I have been pushing for this. What I'd like to get an idea is what is the effect that's going to take place, because we are dealing with a limited area. When we started the exercise, we talked about, and you had shown how some places are able to put 6 houses per acre when there are 4. Are we going to be seeing that they'll be mostly all going to R4, and given the size of it, an estimate of 10 houses less? I'm not asking for a specific, I'm not asking for an exact. I understand that developers have come up, but I just want to know what is the effect that we can expect or anticipate or approximate, given we're going to be passing this ordinance and then we're in support of it.
In terms of individual property owners, I wish we would have been incorporated in 1800. We got incorporated in 1999. These lots were platted long before we got incorporated. These are legally buildable lots once the storm drainage system goes in. They are currently legal buildable lots also. What we're trying to do is to address the major infrastructure problem here, but the council's direction, including yours, was let's fix the infrastructure problem, and in the meantime, we pass this ordinance to make sure that we don't exacerbate the existing storm drainage problems on the site.
I appreciate that, and again, I think there's a miscommunication in this.
Nor this ordinance, nor the proposed storm drainage improvements going to change legal lots on that at that location. They are still legal buildable lots.
Yes, but I'm not questioning that. What I'm asking is, do we anticipate, obviously, the whole idea of this is to make it more expensive, and then we're not hopefully going to be able to see the 6 per acre as you just illustrated in the picture out there, because it's going to have, the threshold's been raised for them.
Intuitively, perhaps, but I can't tell you that conclusively, and nor can any staff members can tell you that here.
So there's the potential also then we're going to pass this with good faith and it has absolutely no effect.
I didn't say that. You're saying that.
No, but you didn't say the opposite either.
Can't, because the market conditions.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilmember Keller?
Yeah, I'm curious, because if it's a lot, if it's a buildable lot, it's just the size of the building that could make a difference. It's not going to really change necessarily how many homes are built. It would change the size of the homes that are going to be built, as that's more likely. And that's actually more appropriate in some respects if they can't hook up.
Well-
That's how I'm understanding it.
That's correct. And so how many are we going to be impacting, potentially?
But I mean, they're going to be able to build.
Exactly.
It's just the size of the house. Then they,
But
Coun-
less
Councilman
driveways,
Keller, you
less,
are
street
correct.
traffic.
Excuse me, let's just have one at a time, please.
So Councilmember Keller, you're correct. The size may change because as our city manager mentioned, that a lot of our permits are coming in at 1,995. And knowing that they would have to manage the stormwater, whether the house is 1,995 square feet of footprint versus if it was a 4,000 square foot footprint, you may see larger footprints as a result of this, for example.
If the stormwater is solved, the issue is solved.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Any other, Councilmember Jaron?
Laura, just a couple questions. One is, are we talking about like 500 lots in the Inglewood plating?
I'll ask our stormwater manager to see if he's actually counted.
Originally, I think there was close to 2,000 lots that were created, 25 by 100. But an exercise that we went through in our pre-design for the Inglewood area, when we were looking at the trunk line and how many lots it could serve, if memory serves me, I think we were thinking that it could serve about 60 undeveloped lots.
How many?
60
60.
undeveloped lots.
Okay.
And it also solves the existing storm drainage problem there too.
Yes.
Any further questions?
Well, yes, a follow-up question. All this area is serviced by sewer lines, right? Are they no longer on septic? The 60 lots, for example. Are they on sewer?
I know there's sewer in the neighborhood. I don't know if there's any septic systems left because you don't have to connect the minute sewer is available. So I'm not sure. Are you aware?
I believe there probably are some septic up there. I know of one off of Northeast 15th that recently converted from septic to sewer. And so
Because
I'm
they
guessing
don't-
there's others.
Because I know historically, the county wouldn't let you build a house on one of those single lots because of the septic requirements.
Yeah. But a lot of those owners have a number of those lots.
Right,
And so
exactly.
if they have 4 of them, it's 10,000 square feet now.
So to answer Romero's question about how many homes, if there are only 60 lots left, we're talking about a maximum of 60 homes.
60 homes, of which that, regardless of changing the sizes, we could potentially be looking at impacting 10 to 20 of them. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we will open the public hearing. Again, I have a few people on a list, and we'll start at the top again. Mark Rush.
Let's see if we can get the music background on this time.
Yeah, my name is Mark Rush. I live at 1488 207th Avenue Northeast, and we're just 1 block north of Inglewood Hill Road. And I've got a video here that I took in March of this year showing the water runoff from behind our house from the street above us, if you want to turn around and take a look. And this is 3 days after the last rainfall we had. And this is my house here on the corner right now. I'll let the video just speak for itself. I guess they don't have the volume up there, but you can see the water runoff coming down, which, as you can see, it's 3 days again since the last rain we had. And I've been living in this house for 7 years. You can see the water purging through my yard because my culvert every year gets full. And being it's a private street, every year I have to have this thing pumped out myself, although I do appreciate this year the city did come out and take care of that for us, but that was because of another issue we had up on 207th. But again, I'll let this just play, and you can see the water just coming down off of 15th Street. And again, this is 3 days after the last rainfall we had, and this goes on all winter long until spring hits. My yard is completely flooded. Our street's completely flooded. It goes down into Englewood Hill Road, and you've got huge carvations that are going down Englewood Hill Road from all this runoff, and this is just our street alone. Again, you can see how my grass is just full of water, and if it goes all the way up, you can see all of our neighbors' homes are full of water. This past summer, I had to spend, money out of my pocket to raise my back patio, which are pavers, because they sunk over 2 inches. So I had to bring in crushed gravel and redo my whole pavers because of all the water that's running off from the hill behind us. You can just see it's just, again, 3 days since the last rainfall. And this was March 9th, I believe. So again, this is just one block, one home in this area that, these issues. And our concern is, what are you going to do for our roads, our streets, and, help us take care of this? I mean, I hear you're taking care of Englewood Hill, but what about us? On the back roads, what about our homes? If I go to sell and go through inspections, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of dampage and everything underground from all this one-off runner, all the runoff water, on my foundation, which might not pass inspection. I'm going to have to go underneath there and take care of that. I mean, there's a lot of issues up here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Leslie Lardy.
Leslie Lardy, 1500 207th Avenue Northeast. First of all, I wanted to thank you for passing the ordinance. It's about time. We've lived in our home for 18 years, and drainage has been a big issue. It's been a bucket of an issue for us for a long time. Things were going well until, unfortunately, when the city came around and started handing out permits in our sensitive slope area. As you noticed from Mark's video, it's the drainage and the silt drainage from 208th, when the building happened on 208th above our sensitive slope area that overlooks 207th Place. It is tenfold. It is a major concern for us. I know we've talked to you quite a few times, and you've done something very appropriate for us, and we appreciate that. I noticed in this article that, and he spoke about it, that you are planning this new drainage system. We really want to know, are you going to come and help us? It's bigger than us. It's not something that we created. We are very vigilant on our drainage. It was nice that y'all came out and helped us out this year. But we are vigilant. We're out there all the time doing what we need to do to save our road. This water runoff has cut our road, undercutted our road. So we would really like your help with that, especially now that you're going to build that. And with your discussion earlier about Englewood plating, you might want to talk to the subject matter experts. Yes, some of us are still on septic, some are on sewer. The plots, yes. And you'll probably get down to, instead of having 6 on a lot, maybe 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Leslie, may I ask you a question, please? Did Water Sewer District contacted your neighborhoods in terms of extending sanitary sewer line in your neighborhood just recently within the last 6 to 9 months?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Dan, I think it says Del Duca, is that right? Please give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm not sure I want to divulge where I live, but I live in Seattle, and I have been doing ECA sites for a very, very long time. I specialize in that kind of properties. And we've been dealing with those in Seattle for a long time, and there is a way to do these things without having consequence. But let me jump back to this one. Pretty much everybody probably voted for the Growth Management Act. It's state general law. All jurisdictions have to comply with that state general law. And what that GMA basis is it trades urban infill for saving the rural areas. I didn't really like the way they did it, but I also voted for it. And I gave up some of my own land because I had some rural land, because it really was the right thing to do. But in any case, you guys, I sense that you guys understand that urban infill actually is a law, a mandate of general law. However, there's also a rule that says you can't allow safety problems to come up. And yep, steep slopes sometimes happen that way. What I would suggest is that when you guys write these ordinances and rules, you actually have to keep them open-ended. One, we have to allow innovation. This rain harvesting one has got me quite excited, so much so that I'm doing a very large commercial site in Renton, and I have to put big detention tanks in the site anyway. Boy, I just changed over and asked the city of Renton if we could just use that water to flush down the toilets. They are starting to have water supply problems also. But there is a rule that happens when you write these laws, and it's called the rule of unintended consequence. And what I fear is, and I haven't heard anybody say anything about it, is you probably are best left with making sure that you don't want to change the net final result of this water. And by that, I'm worried about actually dewatering the hillside, because what will happen is you're going to see in about 5 more years, the big trees are going to die. This does happen. And so I would suggest watch out for that one. Those trees are really used to a certain amount of water all the time. Probably better that we don't dewater the hillside, but also we have to make sure that when we build, we don't, and this is how we do it in the city of Seattle, you're not allowed to concentrate off-site runoff, nor do any velocity increase of the runoff from the sites. We solve those. I'm running over my 3 minutes.
Conclude, if you could.
Well, we solve these in Seattle by peak flow detention tanks. And what it does is it gathers that up off of all of this out here, stores in the tank, and then it meters it out at a controlled rate. It's a 100% controllable rate. And what that means is before it goes off.
Just so you know, I think our Public Works Department knows all about detention tanks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Actually, the one right there is
It's underneath the plaza
yeah, you
there.
guys probably really do know about it. Well, what I'm saying is these things work. I put in a lot of them. That's the first thing we can do is go towards those. But please don't close the door. I used all the last of my money I had from the downturn, and I bought 3 lots in Inglewood. Oh, unlucky me, and I bought them last winter. The financial hardship on a guy like me, if you close me out, boy, I thought I'd already had it tough surviving 7 years of this economic disaster. This is going to kill me. And I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to feel sorry for it, but please remember, the people who live on that hillside, they have their houses there. And if they think that their water runoff isn't causing a problem, or, I mean, that's not a magic condition by itself.
I think we get the message, so thank you very much.
Okay, well, anyway, probably don't want to dewater that hill.
Okay.
Need to seriously consider that.
Speaking of stormwater and lightning. I have one more name. Nathan, I believe is the first name. I'm not quite sure I could read the second name. And you have, please give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Nathan Chapman. My address is P.O. Box 816, Redmond, Washington, 98073. I'm the owner of a small development company called Novelty Hill Development, LLC. And I'm a very small builder. Yes.
Competing with the storm, so if you could speak up just a little.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'm a very small builder. I build just a handful of homes per year. And just as Dan mentioned, this is the type of ordinance that will actually could put me out of business. I know I have built a few homes in the Inglewood area. I recognize that there are some issues. I think we have been proactive about helping this. At the same time, there are ways to manage it, and I hope that maybe you can keep an open mind about utilizing rainwater harvesting, trapping the code, so we can continue to build and develop these existing lots. And I just hope a few of them would actually purchase them in June, and the ordinance was enacted in July. So it was a very blowback to me. It's been very tough. So that's basically all I have to say. I hope that you guys keep an open mind. I've been working with Eric LaFrance. He's been great at talking with me about the solutions, and I think we can get over it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, we generally like to have visual and audio accompaniment to our council meetings. Okay, anyone else like to give public comment? Please. This is, again, the public hearing.
Jill Rush again. Whoa, Jill Rush again. I just want to direct this to Mr. Yancey and his comments he just made earlier, referring to these lots as legal buildable lots. Again, a lot of these have exceptions to the permits, and I don't believe they're all legal buildable lots. And that's what I was hoping to go through with somebody in the city office to find out exactly what codes have been violated and which ones are actually buildable. Sensitive areas and steep slopes and are not buildable lots, yet they have been granted building permits. And I offer any one of you to come home with me tonight after this and see our house and our road flooded. And we are connected to the sewer and the storm drains or whatever they have there. But come on home with me, and I don't think we'll need to say anything more about what's happening in Inglewood.
All right, thank you. Anyone else, please come to the podium and give your name and address.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Doug Topp, live in Bellevue, 16674 Southeast 17th Street. Okay, and so there was group of 4 of us who purchased properties to go build our own homes up on the top of Inglewood Hill, 211th Street. And at the time, we were working with City of Sammamish. We had, unfortunately, different planners for each of the lots. So left hand wasn't talking to the right hand, and through that whole process, we found out that we bought the properties from Brad Sourbeard, and he basically reneged on the contract and left us hanging for the fact that he didn't put in the tight drains and the hammerhead turnaround. And so by the time that was all discovered, it stopped us in our tracks as of a downturn of the market. Cascade Banks pulled our notes from us. We all expected to get renewal, and we hunkered down, and we've been making payments on these lots, and it's been devastating to the nth degree. We just came up in this March where our RUEs were come due, and we were working with the city to try to get those transitioned into the building permits. I missed one of the employees who we were working with, and they went on vacation, so we got stalled for 2 weeks. came back and I was notified that I had 24 hours to get our permits in and get everything aligned. The guy that was managing the properties, we brought the bundles of paper down. The city was great. They were out there ready, triage, and to help us through, only to find out that we took a third hit by the fact that the guy we were working with failed to order the actual drawings, so we showed up to get permits without drawings. We lost the RUEs. We're now in the process of going back for RUEs. We have a Thursday morning appointment for a pre-application meeting to start the process over again. And when we found out about this ordinance, we're sitting here looking at our life savings dwindling away with yet a fourth, another heinous shot down. And this is devastating. This is my family's life savings. I got a daughter who's going to college in California. It's all we can do to afford that. Plus, I've got this sunken cost here that's just sitting, and now it's looking like the value of the property under these situations is not doing well. So I don't know a lot. I'm not a builder. I don't know a lot about water waste management. It sounds like there's some people in here who has lots of good ideas, probably on the city, but I would certainly urge anything that can possibly be done about sensible management. I am a mechanical engineer by trade, work for the Boeing company, senior manager leader at the MAX program, so I understand engineering. I've done builds. So there are ways usually to work through these, and I would urge and strongly, strongly hope that you guys can do a sensible approach on trying to solve this. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, last call. The public hearing is closed. Next, Mr. City Manager, we need to, I believe my understanding is that the regulations have been revised. Laura?
Yes, based on the feedback we received at council, we do have some revisions proposed in your packet. Again, as I was stating earlier, to make sure that these regulations aren't applied or considered applicable to the rest of the city where we don't need to reduce the square footage. So in Sammamish Municipal Code 1320, .020, number 1A, we had, we're requesting to, or recommending we change that from the 500 back to the 2,000, and then add a A1 that would specifically show the 500 square foot just to the map that's attached to the ordinance. And again, on the page A3, there's another reference to the map as well.
So we need a council motion to adopt the ordinance with those amendments.
So those are all the changes?
Right.
Okay. Well, then, do we have a motion to approve the ordinance as amended? Do you have a second? Now we can open it up for question and discussion. I'll start down here. Councilmember Odell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Laura, we went from 2,000 under, I'm on page A1, under section 1A, and we went from 2,000 down to 5,000, back up to 2,000 again. Can you tell me what went on here?
So we went from 2,000 to 500 with
500,
our
I'm sorry.
intent to only apply that to the specific area. But during the council meeting on July 15th, it was pointed out that could be interpreted, and somebody could point out and say, hey, you're not making these other areas within the city kind of the unintended consequences, and this could apply citywide. And we didn't want to do that. So rather than make revisions on the floor on July 15th, our city attorney recommended that staff go back and review that and bring the changes to address that concern back here tonight, which is what we've done, with returning that to 2,000 and then adding the paragraph A1, which says would result in 500 square feet or more of new impervious surface replaced impervious surface, or new plus replaced within a historic plat as defined and mapped in ordinance Exhibit A. So that's where you actually have the picture of the map that shows the limits of the area.
So, to make sure I understand this, the effect of A1, assuming a lot that has nothing on it today, they walk in the door with a plan for, say, 1,700 square feet, just for instance. The fact that it's over 500 would trigger this?
Correct.
Okay. So anything over 500?
Yes.
In
Within
this
the
area?
mapped
In this
area.
area, okay. All right, thank you.
Councilmember, is that all, Councilmember?
That's it.
Okay, Councilmember, or Deputy Mayor Huckabee?
No questions.
Councilmember Valderrama?
No, I think those questions earlier cover it. Thank you.
Councilmember Keller?
No questions.
Councilmember
Gerund.
Gerund? He's been out of town for a long time.
New to the
yeah.
council.
I do have a question. If you own 3 lots, and you're under 500 square feet on each lot, can you combine it and build a single house on a 3-lot plat with, say, 1,500 square feet or 1,499 square feet and be exempt from this?
No, it's per project.
Single project on 3 lots, but it's per project. Okay, I understand.
Okay. Can you, I have one question. Can you, for the sake of the audience, can you run by me the, your schedule for this? Or maybe I should ask the city manager, just so everybody understands. This is for 6 months.
And it is scheduled to go to Planning Commission. I think it is scheduled for October.
We are going to be discussing this as a work session with the Planning Commission on September 18th. The slides up.
So-
Rita, if you could pull them.
Recommendation is coming back, or their recommendation is formulated on October 16, if I remember.
October 16th, we'll have the
Okay.
public hearing and deliberations. If we need one more meeting in November for the public, for the Planning Commission to continue deliberations, we will. And then we will bring those back in January for the council to consider for.
So if we have something that comes from the Planning Commission which might offer alternative methods or whatever, that would come back in October?
And you would consider that?
Then we would consider that at that time?
Looking at the schedule, it may be January before. those
Might be
would come.
January?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the final solution, if you will, the trunk line is scheduled, you're in planning now?
Correct. We are currently in the design. We will begin, we plan to be at 60% design by early next year, and then we will enter the permitting phase. And then we don't want to go into final design until we've gone through the permitting. It's a lengthy permitting process. And then once we have all the input from the permits, we'll do the final design and then begin construction in the fish window in 2016.
Okay, so the solution will be, the ultimate solution will be 2016. In the meantime, we may have some alternative options.
Right.
Okay. All right. Any other final questions? Okay. Done?
Just one more, Laura. I heard some public comments about projects or homes that are not exactly in this area, but will they be able to be picked up by the trunk line, some of these existing problems now?
So the trunk line will go in, and so if there is new development happening, we have a place for them to tie in. As you recall, we discussed not doing the branches off the truck line, if you will, for a lack of better description, up into the neighborhood. That's something that could be added in the future, but it's not part of the existing project.
You wanted to help the neighborhood by providing the largest cost of the storm drainage problem, which is the transmission line trunk lines. And then that's going to be, the city is going to pay for that one way or the other. And if there's some existing problems, this would help significantly for the homeowners to get together and perhaps form an LID, and we can work with them to connect to that trunk line after we build it. Right now, they don't have any solution because the closest storm drainage system is way down the Inglewood Hill Road. It would be cost prohibitive for anybody to do anything with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, then, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? It is unanimous, 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to new business, and we'll pick up with item number 6, Route 269, Partnership Extension, King County Metro. I believe Councilmember Odell asked to pull that. Do you want to address the issue?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I read this through, the question that popped into my mind, and I didn't see it, but maybe I just plain missed it, although I read the document twice, was what will be the number of daily trips we have, both during the weekday and on weekends, as a result of doing this. I mean, 269 will be there in some fashion. What we're paying for is incremental service here. So when we're all done with this, how many round trips a day during the week are we going to have, and during the weekend are we going to have? And the reason I'm asking this is, having spent a year as a Sammamish representative for SCA on the Regional Transit Committee, I have developed a knack of making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed when it comes to dealing with Metro. And my concern is that we get halfway through the period here and Metro says, well, we're going to cut our part of it and leave you with yours, if that in fact is the way it could work. But once again, when I look at the daily ridership, we're in the neighborhood of around 525 people a day. And is this one way, or is it a round trip in and out? What is it?
Mr. City Manager, this is your contract.
Yes.
Let's hear from you.
Thank you.
Before you go into answering that detailed question, could you just describe in general terms what this is about?
Thank you.
That'd be good, yeah.
Thank you. This was extensive hard work of City Council going back, was about 5-6 years ago we started this thing. And it's a new program that the Metro was not interested in sending us new bus systems here unless the local agencies were willing to pay a portion of that. Mm-hmm. As a result, we established a partnership here that is Sammamish, Redmond, Issaquah, and thanks to Microsoft also, Microsoft partnered with us. So we got some private sector, public sector. We pay a portion of the cost. It's about the 33% of the cost that we pay, we mean the partners, and the Metro pays 66%. 61%, 66 and 2/3%. I'm just talking about rough numbers. This route was actually going to disappear. It was going to be gone. Mm-hmm. And again, thanks to, the current council, their lobbying effort, and then the staff, I got to give a lot of credit to here, our city engineer. He's been working diligently on this, Jeff Browns. We were able to now extend at least one more year to this agreement. We were trying to extend 2 years, which would have been a typical extension. We would have done for 2 years. We were not able to we were not successful to get that 2-year extension. This is for 1-year extension. What this one does is to keep the Route 269 intact for another year for us. What would happen after that? I don't know. We're obviously, all of us are working at the legislative level, local level, regional level to keep these buses going. This is one of the most successful bus routes that we have in the Sammamish. So in terms of the ridership numbers, I'm going to turn it over to our city engineer to give you those numbers, Tom.
Thank you.
Jeff, do you have those numbers?
Yes, I do. They're in the we'll come to them in just a moment. Actually, in the agenda bill as well. And this is the ridership trend, and these are daily boardings, so they're not daily. Thank you. Not daily round trips. They're daily boardings. So if somebody were to take a round trip, there'd be 2 trips on this graph. And in the last count of fall of last year, there's a slight decline, but overall it's been a very successful route. Metro staff has been consistent over the years that they see this route as a priority and they're interested in keeping it moving forward.
Okay. Just one question. It's not on their current list of
No.
of reductions, I believe. So
It's not,
to put
but
that out there.
the Metro manager was authorized by King County Council to also eliminate some of these partnership routes too.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that's something we can't really answer at this point. Anyone else with a question? Deputy Mayor Huckabee, you're next.
Jeff, when you say daily boardings, that means the outbound traffic, so we're not counting the people that are coming back, and there might be more coming back?
We're counting
because
both.
they missed-
So
they
any
missed
any
both.
person that gets onto a Route 269 is counted,
Okay,
regardless of which way or when.
okay, thank you.
So as I look at it, it's basically about 300 a day each direction.
Well, that depends. Yeah, there's no way to tell whether that's 600 people or 450 people.
Well,
or-
500 people, but if, assuming that somebody is riding it one way, would be, if they wouldn't be taking 269, they would be taking their car. That is actually 1,000 cars off the roads. Well,
It sounds good.
It's a one-way going downtown, that's what it's counted, that assume that that person is not riding a bus, they will be going with the car, and that car will be coming back also, that's 2 trips.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, Councilmember Alderama?
Yeah, I just want to have a absolute clarification that what we are doing is just extending the prior funding agreements that we had made in 2007. This is not new net money that's being requested in any way, shape, or form to supplement what the failed Proposition 1, correct?
Not at all. This is
City Manager, that's
nothing
correct.
new. Yeah.
Councilmember
This is
Valderrama.
actually just an extension of the 2007 agreement, that
2008 agreement.
the 2008 agreement that was in place already. Thanks.
Thank you. One more question.
Councilmember Keller?
Yeah, I'm just curious, the other cities, what you were saying that we were able to encourage them to extend this, were the other cities committed 100%?
Well, they were just as excited about continuing this as we were. I think our biggest proponent was Microsoft and Jeff here for pushing this forward.
Microsoft was even trying to position Metro to let us even add more service, but that's a whole different category of going outside of the agreement that's before us already.
Councilmember Jarrett, any questions?
Yeah, Jeff, looking at the graph, it looks like in 2007, before we did the extra service, it was about 300 boardings per day. And if you say it's up to about 500 after the additional service, that's an extra 200 boardings a day. So that's maybe 60,000 boardings in a year. And it's about $500 and some $1,000. So maybe $8 a boarding is what it's costing. And that's not counting the fare.
Right.
So it's an expensive proposition per boarding, actually.
You could look at it that way, yes. Ultimately, it's Sammamish doing their part to try and, because we're limited in what options we have for public transit, and this is one thing we can try and extend that regional dollar to provide more transit service.
Councilmember Odell?
Thank you. Jeff, at the end of the day, how many one-way trips, bus trips, do we wind up with?
So total, at the end, there's 31 one-way trips. And the reason it's hard to quantify it as round trip because the number of trips are unbalanced. You have more trips in the peak direction, which is from Issaquah to Overlake in the morning, than you do coming from Overlake to Issaquah in the morning. So you don't have an even, and then even you don't have the same number of return trips in the evening, so it doesn't balance out exactly. But there are a total of 31 trips. And before you there, those numbers, the 31 should be based on the bottom segment there. So there's nine, the peak direction is in bold face. So in the morning, there's 9 trips, and that's at the 20-minute headway or frequency of every 20 minutes. That's one of the main benefits of the Transit Now agreement. Prior to the agreement, there are 30-minute headways. And there's, the transit planners tell us that once you go from a 20-minute to a 30-minute, 30-minute to a 20-minute, and you increase that headway, it makes ridership definitely grow substantially. And then the converse, the PM peak trip coming home from Overlake or Microsoft is 11 trips. And then there's also a total of 4 and total of 7 in the off-peak. So the total one-way trips is 31.
Of the 31, am I correct in that 7 are because of this agreement?
That sounds correct, yes.
Okay, any other, can I have a motion to approve this agenda item?
So moved.
Can I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Okay, we'll go on to item number 11. Is a resolution expressing the city's intent to competitively procure a new solid waste collection contract effective January 1st, 2017 through a bid process, rather. Do you want to include 12 with that as well?
Yeah, might as well, because we just have one staff report, so we'll have the two
That's
council action
right.
to approve it.
It also includes a contract with Solid Waste Contract Negotiations, Epicenter Services LLC. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're getting close to end of our franchise agreement for garbage contracts. That's ending in December 2016. You know, some might say that that's quite a ways down the road. It really isn't when you get into the garbage contract. It takes a lot of time, effort to get these contracts done. We don't have an in-house expertise with this thing, and we obviously went outside and asked somebody to help with us. The same person help us that is going to help us going forward is also the same person help many jurisdictions to get their successful solid waste contracts negotiated and put in place. Our Administrative Services Director, Beth Goldberg, has been managing this project, so without taking too much of her time in terms of staff presentation, I'm going to turn it over to her to go through the details. And Beth, I think what we might want to do is go through item number 11 with your staff report, and we also provide a staff report for item 12, and then we'll ask the council to approve both of them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm going to walk through this presentation and start with a little bit of background as to why we are where we are today. The city of Sammamish, as you know, are currently served by two solid waste hauling companies, Waste Management, which services the city north of Inglewood Road, Northeast 8th Street, and Republic Services, which services the city south of Inglewood Hill Road and Northeast 8th Street. We estimate that the total contracts are worth roughly $5 to $6 million annually, or $50 to $60 million over a 10-year period. This is a rough estimate. It's ultimately based on the mix of services that we would provide moving forward in the future and the price at which we're able to provide those services. But this gives you an idea of the scope of the services being provided from a dollar perspective. A little bit more background. The services that are currently being provided in the city of Sammamish are generally the kinds of services that were in place to the surrounding areas and Sammamish itself before Sammamish incorporated in 1999. So basically, it's a rural level of service at a rural cost. Those contracts expire on December 31st, 2016. So this is the first opportunity in the city of Sammamish's history to competitively procure a new solid waste contract. And when we're looking at solid waste contracts, we're talking about a long-term contract. The service providers need to make significant capital outlays in terms of purchasing trucks and containers to haul the trash that they don't want to make those commitments if they are not going to be the service provider over a long period of time. So typically you're seeing contracts in place for 7 to 10 years. In terms of looking ahead and this opportunity to competitively procure a contract, it does provide Sammamish with an opportunity to have a single solid waste contractor providing uniform service across the city. With two different service providers, as we've got now, there are differences in services across the city, and this is an opportunity to have some uniformity in the services that we provide. It creates clarity for residents. So, for example, now, I will get phone calls from residents with concerns about their garbage service. And one of the first questions I always ask is, who is your service provider? And sometimes people know, sometimes people don't know. And if they don't know, it's then a discussion about where they live and their address. If we had a single provider, it makes those discussions easier, and it's one less question we have to ask the citizens when they're making inquiries. It also makes it easier for them when they are searching the web for the service provider. They only need to go to one spot to find the information that they're looking for. It's also an opportunity for us to expand, potentially enhance the services that we're providing. So for example, yard waste is one service that is not being uniformly provided across the city. There are differences in the two service providers. So this is an opportunity for us to, first of all, gauge from the citizens what kind of yard waste service they want, and then apply that uniformly across the city. It's also an opportunity to strengthen inclement weather provisions in the contracts to ensure better service, more consistent service in the event of a winter storm where there have been hiccups in the past. In terms of the contract objectives in a new contract and procurement principles, at the staff, we are seeing a number of things that I think need to guide the work moving forward. First of all, this is an opportunity for improved services for Sammamish residents and businesses. It's also an opportunity, again, the first one in the city's history, to secure competitive rates that are in line with the surrounding communities. Again, our services are based on more of a rural model. We have evolved into a more urban environment. This is an opportunity to get those competitive rates. And then, as I talked about in the last slide, a single provider to create streamlined and uniform service throughout the city. In terms of principles guiding the procurement process, staff sees three key things to guide the process. First of all, a transparent process, a process that is fair to all bidders, and a process that results in us getting the best service and rate package for our citizens and our businesses. In terms of the competitive procurement process, there are basically two approaches that we can follow as we go through this process. The first process that I'll talk about first is a request for proposal process, and then I will talk about a request for bid process. The request for proposal process involves the city laying out through an RFP broad objectives and service parameters that we would like to achieve. And then the various contractors respond with a proposal of how they best feel they would meet those service objectives in a price. The advantage of an RFP process is that it does give the city maximum flexibility at the negotiating table. So once you receive the proposals, select a winning bidder, for lack of a better word, you can then negotiate further. There's room to negotiate further within an RFP process. So it gives you maximum flexibility at the negotiating table. A disadvantage, however, of the RFP process is that industry trends over the last couple of years, as we've seen in other jurisdictions, we've seen a convergence of the proposals being submitted by the bidders. So they are very similar to one another. So it's leaving staff and the consultants we're using and ultimately you, the decision makers as council members, to be making decisions on very subjective lines, and it makes it potentially a more lengthy process, a more difficult process, and it can create a perception of unfairness and added uncertainty to the process. So advantage, you have maximum negotiating flexibility. Disadvantage is it could be a more nuanced, complicated process because there are such similarities between the different proposals. Request for bid process is different from the RFP process in that we would be very specific in the documents announcing this procurement process about the services that we want to provide to the citizens and businesses in Sammamish. So we would be very clear about the kinds of yard waste services. We would be clear about the kinds of inclement weather provisions that we would want the bidder to make. And then it would be up to the various vendors to respond with their price. And the selection process then becomes very straightforward. We would review all of the proposals to make sure that we're confident that, first of all, they can meet those objectives. And then once we've got that level of confidence, it's the lowest price wins. So it's a very straightforward process. So that is the key advantage with this process. It requires less staff time, a more straightforward process for the council, less consultant time, and then less cost to the city. Disadvantage is basically the antithesis of what I talked about with the RFP process, is we don't then have flexibility to negotiate further once we get those bids. So that's sort of a comparison and contrast of the two approaches. What staff is recommending and what you have in your packets today is a resolution that would endorse and set the city on a course of action where we would pursue a request for bid process. And staff is making this recommendation, again, on the grounds that the RFB process is a more transparent, fair, cost-effective process. And we think that these sort of values or objectives in the procurement process are particularly important given the long-term nature of this contract, that we want to ensure that there is a level of fairness and transparency in the process. So under item number 11 in your packets is a resolution for council consideration.
This would be just questions, not deliberation. Councilmember Jared. He's been gone a long time.
You mentioned earlier about the rural nature of our service now, but I don't know, I'm pretty pleased with the service at our house at least, and it seems that they include yard waste as an option. What improvements do you see happening going towards the city versus rural? I guess I don't understand.
We'll ask our consultant to help answer that question. So Jeff is stepping up. Jeff, why don't you come to the staff table right there, right next to the bath, please? He knows his business. And I might add to council that we answer those questions, but the bid process is the process that we're accustomed to. We bid the public projects. We did the public process. It's open process. It's transparent process. It is not subject to speculation, and nobody accuses anybody.
And in the north, we do have a yard waste option as well.
With that, Jeff, you want to answer the council member? What's council member?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, whatever.
Jared.
Long time.
Okay. Jeff Brown, Epicenter Services.
Been around a long time.
So that's partly code in that the services that you have and the rates you pay are based on the service package that's available in the unincorporated areas, extending out, past Duval, past Carnation. It's that same package. And so those services are provided by Utilities and Transportation Commission rules. And they're a little bit different than what you might find in Issaquah or Bellevue or Redmond. And your rates are a lot different too. You're paying rates that are a lot similar to the rural area rates because that's what it took to expire the rights to the franchise. And so what that really is you inherited a system without really any ability for the city to ask its residents about what they wanted or make any judgments about what services were appropriate for Sammamish. You have the rural area standard default package here. And so what we're really saying is this is an opportunity for the city now to really ask people what they want and tailor a specific contract that meets the needs of the residents instead of having the default program.
And what you're saying is rural rates are higher than urban rates?
They are higher because of the UTC system takes a large geographic area, which can include suburban areas as well as extremely rural areas, and as a matter of policy, like power, electricity, says the rates are going to be the same throughout the area. So it's actually an implicit cross-subsidy between more urban, dense areas and rural areas. And when cities carve out their service areas, typically their rates go down because they're not subsidizing the outside areas. So I think 10 years ago or 8 years ago, we were really looking forward to getting to this point where the city could actually get out of that system and take advantage of having its own process and its own contract.
Councilmember Keller?
Actually, Council Members Jaron's questions were similar to what I would be asking, but I want to go a little bit further just on price. I mean, I suspect that if you have experience doing this, you know what our rates are today and what Issaquah and Redmond is paying. So is it substantial, the savings that we might see between these two?
I hope so, but I don't know. You know, it's the process as it goes on is different in every city. Some cities choose to enhance services slightly, so there are additional services provided, like cleanup events, community cleanup events, spring cleanups, or different sorts of services that get added so the residents pay the same rates, but they get a lot more service. There are other cities that choose to get the lowest price possible. Depends how competitive people are feeling at the time. But in general, I think you will get a better service and rate package out of a new competitively procured contract than you have now.
And actually, maybe if I could add here, and we'll get to this a little bit later in the presentation, but part of the work going forward would be a survey of residents to find out what they want. Do they want enhanced services? Are they happy with the services they're getting now to help guide what we put in those bid documents?
Councilmember Valderrama?
Yeah, Beth answered my question as far as how were you going to ask the citizens to go forward with her comment about the survey. So I appreciate that going forward as we ask that. And Councilmember Keller had asked the question that I had on the cost, given that we have those benchmarks from our cities to our north and south, of which we at one time were part of their PAA areas when these were negotiated. I have one last question dealing with, we talked about the time requirements for the request for a proposal being more. Is it significantly more time and labor intensive to do the RFP versus the bidding process because of the reviews and that?
Yeah, it's mostly, a lot of the additional time is staff management time in selecting evaluation committee members, getting them up to speed, having them read the proposals, and run through the entire process. And then once you do that and you have a selected proponent that goes to council, then there can be a lot of opportunities for things to take a lot of time. Like in Bothell, for example, it took 3 or 4 council meetings to finally get through to get a completed contract because some of the things that were discussed in that, you know, there's just a lot of subjective things, a lot of things get challenged, a lot of things you go back and forth on before you finally get to selecting a contractor. So the aggregate of that extra evaluation time, that negotiation time that you have in the middle, and then the process time tends to add a lot of city staff time and consultant time too.
And it's not so much the time, is against the appearance issue that I'm concerned most. You know, if you go through the proposal, this is a 10-year, $50-60 million contract. And whoever you select, invariably the person or the contractor is not selected is going to raise the issue saying that, well, I had a better rate, even though it's not the same package, it's a different package. What we're going forward right now, we will do some upfront work, doing the citizen survey, develop the bid documents, get that information, upfront work done, and then everybody's bidding apples versus apples, so you're not having apples proposal or an orange proposal.
I understand, but we are also forsaking the bidders being able to be creative in their solutions and coming back with just the traditional benefits of the RFP.
There will be steps to talk with the 3 potential contractors who provide a service in this area too. We will have that included too. Just like in any major construction project, what we call is a pre-bid meeting, and then we also do right before the bid opening is that the contractors walk through. In this case, once we find out what our citizens wants to do, then we'll also check with our purveyors. And I got to tell you that Purveyor is going to probably tell you that they prefer the proposal, request for proposal method rather than bid packet. You have already got one contractor lobbying you. I think next week we're going to have...
We've got all of, well, 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3. Yeah, they
Feel
will all
slighted
lobby
by the
saying
third,
that do the request for proposal.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Huckabee.
I'm really excited about the request for bid. At the Association of Washington Cities meeting in Spokane, there was a lot of conversation because all of the waste haulers were there. And in talking to other cities, they seemed to be extremely pleased with the request for bid, that they were able then to define what they wanted and then to get bid packages that covered that. So my question to you is, could you just briefly describe the process we would go through with our citizens in terms of asking for an array of services so we aren't just getting sort of pie-in-the-sky level of services where we wouldn't ever be able to meet those expectations? I know that some of the things I've heard are, bear-proof cans, the ability to choose different size cans depending upon your set circumstances. Inclement weather is a real important thing, not having to pay extra cost if you go out and buy your own bear-proof can. So how did that process, just in a few minutes, how did that process work in other cities?
Jeff, you want to answer that question?
Yeah, there's so many cities have gone through the process that there's a fairly defined set of programs that are commonly available. For example, Issaquah went through the whole bear-proof container issue and a lot of those things. And so I think we have a pretty good idea of what sort of things are going to be popular for different cities, and we can refine the questions in the survey to really dial in on that. For example, I know in Sammamish, one of the issues is going to be how yard waste programs or yard debris programs are configured. We went through a little bit of that before when we have your 2 franchises in place because the services were different, and we tried to harmonize them last time, and that ended up having to get reversed. So I think I'm somewhat gun-shy about making sure that we ask all the questions. Do people, for example, want embedded yard debris where it's part of their service package like your surrounding cities have, or do they want to consider having it be subscription-based where it's just somebody who wants it gets it? What's the standard package? Do you get one 96-gallon cart and then you pay for extras, or do you get 2 96-gallon carts and then pay for extras? And that has an implicit cross-subsidy between people that have large lots and small lots.
Right,
so we can
exactly.
really dial into what people actually feel is a good service package based on your community. And then if there are 2 or 3 alternatives that we want to get pricing on through the bidding process, I usually support doing as much as we can on price discovery, because then you can decide, for example, when this comes back to council, if you get a really good deal if you embedded yard debris. Let's say your subscription rate was $10, but it was only going to cost $6 if it was citywide included in the garbage rates. You'd have concrete numbers on which you can make a decision on, and you could tailor those services accordingly. So I would think over this next quarter that Beth and I will work a lot on developing a survey that deals with the known questions I think that we would want to find answers to. And I don't know if that would come back as an information item before it goes out.
Yes, he will come back to the council to check with you.
Yeah.
And also, I think there's sufficient time in the schedule, and we'll go through this a little bit more, where we could get the survey results. And if it's the desire of the council, we could also do some additional outreach and vetting to the community. So for example, to sort of piggyback on your example, if there's a pie in the sky option that appears to resonate in the survey, but it's going to add, and I'm going to do this just to make a point, $50 to the monthly cost of garbage service, I would think we would want to tease that out through some sort of public engagement, and there should be sufficient opportunity in the schedule to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Odell?
Thank you. I'm going to kind of echo Councilmember Valderrama in that I believe that while the request for bid process has a lot going for it, in my former life and as a seller of high-value assets, with wings and engines, that frequently our customers would issue a certain base requirement and then leave it up to the creativity of the OEMs to come through with something that made a difference. And I think we can probably still do that here, and I thought I heard that being vocalized subsequent to Ramiro's comment. In terms of the survey, are you planning to do a citywide survey or a representative scientific sample, or
Only on the
what?
Statistically valid survey, sample size of 400, that's what we used it here, so.
Okay. I would be interested, frankly, in knowing what the differences are between Waste Management Republic. I have Waste Management as my provider, but I have no idea what Republic is doing. I'd also be interested in knowing what the kinds of services are available in both Redmond and Issaquah, or even Bellevue, so that I, as a council member, would have a better basis for making a judgment. A couple of requests to think about. One is with respect to yard and waste services. At least in my area, they cut back too soon. We get storms in November and December, and they reduce it as of November 1st. So that creates piles of junk in my yard. Secondly, regarding other stuff that doesn't fit in the normal scope of things. I have a whole box full of dead batteries. I have probably 16 cans, half-used cans of latex paint I can't get rid of and which refuse to dry out. And I don't really think I should flush it down the toilet.
Are you taking advantage of the citywide recycling event?
Yeah, when I'm around for it. But that's another issue, Ben, in that sometimes these are once a year or semi-annually at best.
Just to solve your problem, the King County also has on their website options for getting rid of paint and
Yeah,
things
I've
like
got to
that.
go,
Well, I mean, you
20
might have
miles
to go
away get
somewhere,
rid of it.
but
That's not
yeah.
convenient. But I think that I'm surprised to hear that we're still under a rural pricing scheme. And yeah, I know. I would also be interested in knowing just what the costs are for our neighboring communities.
Mr. City Manager, final
Thank you.
words?
And I can answer a number of questions that the Councilmember Odell raised. And I think it's easy to remember the Councilmember Odell's name, partly because he wasn't on vacation for about 3 months or 4 months. So he's been around at the City Hall for quite some time. So easy to remember. The reason contracts are long period of contracts, partly because the contractor is going to make some investment. They're going to buy some trucks, and they are going to invest some employees. So that's one of the reasons that the standard contract with about the 7 years and 3 years, the extension added to it for what they call, there's a technical term for it. That's why it's 10 years. I dealt with this issue in my past life in another city too. In terms of the proposal versus bid it, man, I would love to have a private sector's flexibility in terms of contract negotiations. I would love to have a Boeing's flexibility and the laws surrounding contract negotiations that the Boeing has. Unfortunately, I don't. We're public sector. We are very restricted and limited to how we negotiate the contracts and what we can negotiate, what we can do outside the public, in front of the public, what are the processes that we go through. I think that's why, Tom, that you're seeing that our recommendation is to go on this route, and that's the route that has been successful in most other places. One caveat that you need to, and we will get the information to you about between the two purveyors, and that's a good question, and we will present that information. There will be probably about multiple study sessions as we go forward that you're going to hear this. And we wanted to make sure that we get this critical decision up front, because that's two different paths that we will be proceeding with it. And once we make the decision tonight, we'll be going in the direction of providing a bid packages on this process. In terms of Klahani annexation, for example, and that annexation happens, that we have to honor the garbage providers in that area. It's almost 10 years franchise agreement. So irrespective of what's the rest of the city is being served, that area continue to be served with this current provider. We'll try to put the cycle of the bidding coinciding with that particular contract is expiring. I think there's about maybe a year or two flexibility that we have in this process. So that the next go-around, 10 years after when we go through for another bid process, then we will then include the Klahani in that process as well. But currently, state law is very clear. If you annex the Klahani, let's say at the end of 2015 or early 2016, you're looking for at least 10 years of commitment to honor that contract. So that's one nuance that we haven't shared that with you, that we've been thinking about it. It may be that the same provider actually wins the contract for the rest of the city, then that would be a lot easier at that time. And you will hear some argument that perhaps in that regard, which you had already heard, that we're providing service to that area currently, so we want to continue to provide the rest of the city. And there's nothing wrong with that company. That company does a good job. But question for me as your city manager is, are citizens getting the value for what they're paying for? They're not currently, because the contract under which we're operating, it's the rural service contract, and we're in an urban area. We need to get a better rate and better services for our citizens. This is the pathway that we think is the best to get us there. I hope that answered your questions, and I'll get the service description between the two cities, Tom, later for you.
Councilmember Keller, you had one more question?
Yeah, I just wanted to, actually, Mayor, we're on really item 11 right now. 12, we'll be talking about the consultant. So I just wanted to make sure that if we move forward, when we get to that, we get an introduction to the consultant.
Thank you.
So at this point, I think we answered all the questions.
Yes.
We need a motion to
Can I have a motion to approve, can I have a motion to, this is not a resolution, this is a,
authorize the city manager.
no, no, it is a resolution. Please.
To direct the city manager to conduct a procurement for the 2017 solid waste hauler contract using a cost-based competitive bidding process, a request for bid that supports high levels of service delivery consistent with expectations of city residents and businesses.
Do you have a second? Second. Any final comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Now on to item 12. You promised an introduction to this.
I'm going to turn it over to Beth to make a presentation, and maybe this is a good time to properly introduce our esteemed consultant here. When I say consultant, it's actually a one-person shop, so.
Reputation precedes him, which is why. Anyway, so sitting next to me is Jeff Brown from Epicenter Services LLC, and as Ben, our city manager, Mr. City Manager, indicated at the outset, he is the expert in this area that has advised countless jurisdictions as they have gone through similar processes. So what we have before you would be an agenda bill that would authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Epicenter Services to help us through this RFB, request for bid process. The contract amount is not to exceed $24,250, and it's coming from 2014 contingency dollars and then some allocations that we'll include in the 2015-2016 budget process. I would like to point out that we do have an option moving forward to recoup these costs by requiring the winning bidder to sign a signing fee when they sign the contract. So we do have the opportunity to recoup these costs through that process. We would obviously need to include that in the bid documents themselves. If I could jump ahead here and maybe talk about the schedule of the work first so that you know what you're buying through these services, and then I could turn it over to Jeff if he wants to add anything further. that the goal of this process is to select a vendor by no later than January 2016. And so you may ask, why do we need the vendor in place by 2016 when they won't be providing the services until January 2017? And that is because any vendor needs to purchase the equipment to service the area, set up routes, other customer service infrastructure. So they need about 11 to 12 months to do that. So that's the end goal. To get to that end goal, we would break the work up into 3 phases. The first phase would occur through the balance of 2014, and it would be the preparatory work that we talked about. So, for example, the customer surveys, coming back and talking to you about mix of services that we may want to consider providing, whether we're hearing about that through the customer surveys or a review of surrounding jurisdictions. Phase 2 would then take the information that we gleaned through the customer surveys and surveys of surrounding jurisdictions and prepare the actual RFB document. And this is an important phase because, as I mentioned in my earlier comments, through the RFB, we have to be very explicit about the services that we want to provide and our service expectations. So we need to vet that, flesh that out through phase 2. And included in this phase, and Mr. City Manager mentioned this in his remarks, we would do an industry review and comment period to solicit input from potential bidders about whether what we are asking for is realistic and doable from their perspective. And then the final phase would begin in July 2015. We would issue the RFB, give them a certain period of time to respond with their proposals, and then have a recommendation ready for all of you in late December 2015 or January 2016. So that's the general schedule, and I could turn it over to Jeff if you'd like to make some additional comments.
Well, I don't have to talk a whole lot. I just, if it makes you feel more comfortable, I have done all the procurements for the surrounding cities, including Bellevue and Issaquah and Snoqualmie, North Bend and Redmond and on and on. So I do pretty much all the procurements in King County and a number in the other state, in the rest of the state. So I think I have a fairly good feel for what's out there and for what different cities with different characters have chosen as a service package. But I'd also like to point out that it's a dynamic process. The RFP or the RFB I would have done 5 years ago is not the one I would do now. The industry is actually changing very rapidly. The nature of the industry is changing. The companies are changing. And part of the scope work you see in front of you now is actually tailored to reflect the best process I can come up with based on things that have happened in neighboring cities and trying to streamline your process for you and get a good outcome without getting derailed or sidetracked in it. So we've had discussions at the city staff level about the importance of doing that and making sure that you have a fair, transparent process and that this process works well for you. So I just wanted to reassure you that I'm bringing the experience of these other cities, some of which I just mentioned, forward to develop this scope of work and the package for your city.
For the record, Jeff only works for public entities, so he doesn't work for private sector in the garbage, so he only works for the cities.
I only work for cities, yes, specifically.
Okay, any questions? Okay, can I have a motion to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Epicenter Services, LLC, for up to $24,500 to provide the technical expertise and support as the city of Sammamish procures a new solid waste collections contract?
So moved.
You have
Second.
A second? Any final comments then? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Beth. Good staff report.
It's been a long summer. As we saw earlier tonight, it's over. But we do offer council reports, and I'll start from our traveler, Councilmember Gerard. You're in.
Thank you, Mr.
We forgot your names, you forgot ours.
I have been over in Europe looking at different systems of government, and I think we're going to have to change this one. Maybe remember the names of the burgomaster and things like that. But before I went on that trip, went to a National League of Cities steering committee meeting in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I'm on the Information Technology and Communications Steering Committee, and we had a lot of interesting discussions. I just cite one, and that is I was expressing concern about cell tower proliferation because as more and more people use more capacity on their cell phones, I asked about that to some of the industry people, and they say that technology is moving so quickly that they're solving that problem with the distributed networks and distributed antenna systems, like little antennas on power poles, and actually using routers in individual people's homes, part of it for individual service and the others like a mini Starbucks, so that we don't have to envision a future where we have huge poles in every block. And I noticed that AT&T has withdrawn their application on Southeast 24th for putting up another pole. Maybe they're seeing the future already. So it was a very fruitful meeting, and I don't want to bore you with the rest of, rest of it, but I'm glad to be back home from Europe. I did take a lot of pictures that I'm going to put together in a PowerPoint for our Parks Commission on different play equipment in other countries. So that's my report.
Okay, Councilmember Keller,
Well, this was a great summer.
use your microphone.
This was a great summer. The weather was really good, and attended a lot of the community events. But I did attend the AWC Municipal Budgeting and Fiscal Management Training Workshop this summer, and that was, that was very helpful, being involved with the budgeting process. This has really been good for me. I also attended the IDEA project recently. They were off for the summer, but they recently had a meeting. They're gearing up again, and I think maybe the mayor might even comment on this. I know he's been to some of the meetings where there's been some synergy between the Drug-Free Coalition in Issaquah, who just received a $125,000 grant that really is supporting the same efforts that the IDEA project, which is for underage drinking and under the influence awareness in our city. In any case, they're working with that team very aggressively, and we're going to hear more about it in their next meeting.
Councilmember Valderrama.
Okay, one question for Councilmember Keller. That's the coalition that does the videos with the Issaquah
Yes.
School District, and so they're looking at bringing it to our schools in Lake Washington as well?
I don't know if they're going to bring that exact program, but
Something
that's,
will be
that's
synergy
an
of it.
activity within their
Okay.
program.
All
Exactly,
right,
but that's
thank
the
you.
group.
Thank you. Two meetings outside in our community that I had attended in early August. One was the Citizens for Sammamish meeting. There, the main topic was, again, the issues of an interest in referendums and initiatives and discussions of citizens' interest to push that forward, either with the council or by signatures. And so there was a discussion on that. Additionally, what was interesting to me was there was a Rotary discussion in the month of August on issues in Sammamish, and they had asked, and one of the repeatedly asked, is to see with the city what they can do, the city can do with King County as we are looking at the possibility of phase 2 of the East Lake Sammamish Trail, to make sure that the promises that King County is saying that they will act differently on the second phase are actually put into procedures so that we can guarantee that they will be put into place rather than just be verbally said. And then finally, let's see, one last point I'd be interested is if the council could get feedback on the information that is followed up on Mrs. Rush that was asked for today on the exemptions and that waiver. So whenever that's finally resolved and discussed, I'd be interested that the council be get copied on that. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Huckabee.
Had a very interesting summer, and we're putting our pictures together, and we'll be bringing it to the Public Works Commission because English roads being about 20 feet wide with no shoulders, and they're used by cars, mothers walking their babies in their baby carriages, people on bicycles, and they seem to manage just fine without having to have wide roads. So we thought we would share that with
I want to see the
Laura
mortality
Fulton.
rates, too.
Pardon?
I want to see the mortality rates as well.
Believe me, on those roads, you see all these pictures of every place there's been a motorcycle accident. They have a sign up where there's been a death by motorcycle, and there are lots of them. But to be a little more serious, I went to the Operations Committee with Laura this past Thursday. Very interesting. The first topic on the agenda was the nonprofit. And Rod Katsuguma was there, and he gave us some background on the issue. And the Department of Retirement Systems is unwilling to check the box on the nonprofit until such time as the IRS decides whether the nonprofit is an instrument of a governmental agency. Well, it turns out that the IRS currently is looking at a lot of nonprofit definitions, and I've asked Rod to send me some information, but the IRS has written a definition, and it's in draft form. And for those that are not familiar with the IRS, they normally issue something in draft, look for comments on it, and then issue a final. And right now, they don't know how long that will take. It could be anywhere from 6 months to 2 years before they go from draft to final. For those of you that are following the news, the House of Representatives has been beating up on the IRS quite seriously, particularly in this division, and a lot of people have left, so they're way behind. And they've also said that they will not allow the backdoor route, which is to request a private letter ruling on this particular topic. Rod thinks that in the draft form, it looks like we would meet the definition, but as he said, if and when we become a nonprofit, and there's no timeline at this point, but at the very least, primarily because of staff time. So even if the IRS were to make a decision, even if we had voted tonight to approve the nonprofit, there isn't enough staff time to get the rest of the work done between now and the end of the year. One of the things that was less clear, because this EF&R asked us if we would go forward with a different resolution, which was to approve the nonprofit subject to approval by DRS and the IRS. And Laura and I asked why, and it wasn't clear. Apparently, they're having a bit of an issue on the 457 plan. Here. Oh, thank you. All of the retirement systems, the PERS systems would fall under the Department of Retirement Systems, but the 457 plan does not. And the custodian will not give them an okay that the new 457 plan that they would write would be okay until they get assurance that everybody is willing to go forward with the nonprofit. So they're kind of bumping heads on that. So you will hear about that at the board meeting. There were a couple of other things that we discussed, one of which, again, I put together a brief list for Laura, and we'll go over it, and we'll cover that with the representatives going to the board. But one of the things you'll see coming to the board is to stop providing medical insurance for working spouses for the non-exempt staff. And then hopefully...
That are covered already by
That could be covered by their own employers.
But they are currently paying for
Understand.
every spouse.
Right.
And which is in a significant dollar amount. So they're going to eliminate it for the exempt staff. And then we're going, hopefully, if the board decides, the Operations Committee will look at alternative ways of dealing with that with the exempt group. But there are a number of other things. The city's been asking questions. We've gotten a lot of answers, some of which have created more questions. And there was a concern raised that the staff at EF&R is spending too much time answering questions from one of the partners. But our response is, if you would answer completely and correctly the first time around, it wouldn't be taking so much time. So there will be a number of other questions, and to the degree that there'll be more things that we'd like to inform you that are coming up at the board meeting, we'll talk about that before the board meeting. So. Then Saturday, excuse me.
Sorry.
I went to the CERT meeting. The CERT group is, they were doing a test of their radios at 4 different park locations. Discovered that part of Ebright Creek, they can't get the coverage they need. Part of Ebright Creek, they can. But their biggest concern, and they are very interested in talking about it, both at the, from a funding standpoint and from the city helping them standpoint, is they need many more people who have ham radios to step forward and volunteer. And they believe that there are over 400 licensed ham radio operators in the city, but they only have 40 or 50 that are willing to volunteer. So they're kind of struggling with how do they outreach to those folks, how can they provide them maybe mobile radios if indeed they don't have their own radios. So some of that we'll be hearing through, actually through Lyman and through the budget process. So that's my report.
That's it. Okay. Councilmember Odell?
First, one follow-up question for Kathy, if I may. One of the things we've heard about before from EFR is their long-held desire to proceed with the building of their own training facility. Is there anything new on that?
Actually, the person that is doing that is our own Bud Backer. And he wrote a report on August 4th, which I believe Laura forwarded to everybody. I know I have a copy, but it turns out that, for example, Alan from North Bend did not have a copy. Diane from Issaquah did not have a copy, so not everybody has gotten that copy. If you don't have it, I'll be happy to forward it on to you. It's fairly complete. Again, that's something that we talked briefly about at the Ops Committee. We talked far too much time about overtime, and then we didn't get into some of the other things that were real key. But the report doesn't really tell us why they need it. And we just talked briefly enough to say, well, what we were looking for is what happened in 2012 and 2013. Why couldn't you use the facility? How many times did you want to use a facility that you weren't able to? Did it cost us overtime in order to be able to do the training because the facility wasn't available during working hours?
How much was it?
And how
Right.
and so we're looking for these numbers and information so we can make a decision, a more rational decision on whether we need to spend millions and millions of dollars to go forward on an operating center. So I'm very pleased. I think Greg Triton is going to be working on that with Bud and I think has a fairly good understanding of how to make that.
Who was that?
Greg?
Oh,
Tryon?
Greg.
Excuse
Okay.
me. Tryon, in terms of making that more complete. So we'll see.
Kathy, I have that report too, and I read it. And I agree with you, it's short on factual data and very short on cost data.
Unfortunately, that's the overtime report, and others have been very much the same way. But we're working on it, and
Okay.
we're trying to help them define how they can respond to us better so that we get the information we need the first go-round.
Okay, thank you. As the city manager alluded to earlier, I stayed kind of around this summer. I think that's his way of saying I was a thorn in his side. But I also want to comment on the National League of Cities Steering Committee meeting that was held in St. Paul. There were 5 of us from the state of Washington who were members of the Transportation and Infrastructure Steering Committee who went, and frankly, We all were disappointed in the meeting and the shape of NLC's program with the federal government on it. So the four of us have gotten together. One has been unable to make it, and we've gone through the driving document with a bunch of amendments that we met on Friday, a week ago Friday, and I've been writing up the amendments that will be taken into discussion with some other people here and then sent on to NLC for hopefully action. The discussion earlier tonight during public comment about the number of exemptions caught my ear, Ben. And, you know, this is a process that I don't understand, frankly. And I'm going to make a suggestion that at some point, perhaps in a future study session, that we have the council, or the council has the opportunity to hear from staff on how this process really works. And that way it can be in the public domain as well. And under what conditions are exemptions granted, and maybe we want to have a voice in whether they should be. That's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, as Councilmember Keller mentioned, I did go a meeting of the ISQA Drug Coalition. This is an organization, has a couple of mayors. Fred Butler is involved and several other folks, but it does relate to the ISQA School District. I have brought up the issue of seeing if we can interest Lake Washington, so we will pursue that. So did go to that meeting. They're trying to figure out what to do with their $125,000. So that's the larger issue, how best to use that money to further their goals. I also attended 2 meetings of a new transit task force. Most of the members were RTC members, Regional Transit Committee members. Others included a smattering of other mayors, the mayor of Renton, mayor of Auburn, and a few others, to come up with a new policy statement concerning some issues with Metro Transit. Rather than go into details there, on this now, the final day for revisions was today. This will then go to the PIC for
Public Issues Committee.
yeah, the Public Issues Committee of Sound Cities. So presumably, hopefully by next week, before the PIC meeting, Councilmember Odell can update us on what the actual policy statement is. So that's all I have to say at this point. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a quick report. Obviously, while you were on recess, and then particularly one of you were traveling all over to Europe, we were working very hard to get the budget done here. And we will have our first draft presentation, Finance Committee, next week, Monday, and then Tuesday evening, we will present to you the budget. Things are in good shape, so that's what I say so far in the budget. I want to welcome Councilmember Jaron. It's nice to have him back. He was already making some comments on the couple of the editing mistakes that we made on the agenda package, so we corrected that. We're relying on you, Don, so we need you to be around here to make those corrections. Lastly, Mr. Mayor, we have an executive session. It's regarding property acquisition and personnel matters. There will not be any action out of the meetings, and I suspect we will be there for 15 minutes.
And just sake of clarity, the personnel issue is under subsection 1F. It's issues related to public employees or officers.
Okay. Do you want to say 15 minutes, or do you think?
I think so.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
We have everyone on hand. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.